Pesticides killing backyard birds isn't a distant headline. It might be happening in your own garden right now, while a chickadee picks through soil 6 feet from where you stood yesterday with a spray bottle in your hand. You did everything right. You read the label. You used the recommended dose on a calm morning away from the wind. And yet, somewhere in that treated soil, in that coated leaf, in that single drop that lands on a beetle, something is already in motion. Not poison in the dramatic sense, not a bird falling from the sky in front of you. Something slower, quieter, and in many ways more disturbing. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that spray does after it leaves your hand, and what it means for every bird that visits your yard this week. Here's what most people believe. Pesticide labels are written in absolutes. Safe for pets, safe for humans, so logically, safe for birds. That's the assumption baked into nearly every product on a garden center shelf. But birds are not small humans, and they are not house pets. Their metabolism runs faster. Their lungs work through a one-way system mammals don't share. A dose calibrated as harmless for a 12-pound dog can move through the body of a half-ounce sparrow in an entirely different way, and the labels were never required to prove otherwise. So when you read "safe around pets and wildlife" on that bottle, what is that claim actually based on? The answer starts with a chemical class you've probably used without knowing its name.
The chemical class is called neonicotinoids, neonics for short. Introduced in the 1990s as a safer alternative to older pesticides, they target an insect's nervous system specifically, sparing mammals direct exposure. For agriculture, the logic made sense. For your backyard, the consequences turned out to be different. A 2013 report from the American Bird Conservancy, authored by toxicologists Pierre Minot and Cynthia Palmer, reviewed over 200 published studies on neonicotinoids and bird toxicity. Their finding was specific. A single neonicotinoid-treated seed can be enough to kill a songbird the size of a sparrow, and a few seeds are enough to impair reproduction in birds far larger. This wasn't a worst-case projection. It was the baseline conclusion, calculated from the EPA's own published toxicity data. And seeds are only one entry point. The spray in your shed reaches your yard through a slower route, through the insects themselves. Consider what a single chickadee family actually needs. A nest of chickadee chicks, raised from hatch to fledge, requires somewhere between 6,000 and 9,000 caterpillars and soft-bodied insects, based on food web research compiled by entomologist Doug Tallamy at the University of Delaware. Not seeds, not suet, caterpillars, almost exclusively, because that's the only food soft enough and protein-dense enough for a nestling to survive on. Now picture your treated rosebush, your sprayed tomato plants, your pest-free lawn. Each one represents insects that never became that food. The spray doesn't have to touch a bird directly. It only has to remove what that bird's chicks were going to eat. And in a yard sprayed regularly, that removal isn't occasional. It's the new baseline. In 2017, a research team led by Margaret Eng at the University of Saskatchewan, working with York University, tested this directly. They dosed wild-caught white-crowned sparrows with field-realistic doses of imidacloprid, one of the most common neonicotinoids sold for home garden use. The birds weren't poisoned in any visible way. They simply stopped eating, lost body mass within days, and showed measurable disorientation in spatial tasks. The most striking result? Sparrows given a single low dose delayed their spring migration by an average of 3.5 days and shifted their departure direction away from true migratory bearing. A few days might sound small. For a bird racing to claim nesting territory before a rival arrives, 3.5 days can mean the difference between raising young and not breeding at all that year.
Here's the part that surprises most gardeners. The pesticide doesn't need to kill the insect outright to cause this harm. A sublethal dose, one that leaves a beetle or caterpillar alive but impaired, still removes it from the food chain just as effectively, because slow, disoriented insects are eaten less efficiently or die before a parent bird ever finds them.
Christopher Templeton's research at the University of Washington on chickadee foraging behavior shows how finely tuned these birds are to insect abundance and movement. A garden that looks green and pest-free to you can register to a foraging chickadee as a landscape that has quietly gone empty.
This isn't only a neonicotinoid story. Broad-spectrum insecticides, the kind sold simply as bug killer, no specialty label required, work by design to eliminate insect populations indiscriminately. They don't distinguish between a mosquito and a moth caterpillar a chickadee chick needs to survive its first week of life. Multiple court hormone studies published between 2010 and 2025 across several songbird species have linked pesticide-disrupted food availability to elevated stress hormone levels in nesting birds, measurable through feather and blood samples, even when no direct chemical exposure occurred. And the stress doesn't end with the parents. It reaches the nest itself in a way most backyard birdwatchers never see.
Elevated parental stress hormones change nestling outcomes directly. Chronically stressed parent birds provision less food per visit the nest less often, and in some documented cases, abandon broods entirely under sustained food scarcity. This connects to something larger than any single yard. Doug Tallamy's broader research at the University of Delaware estimates that a 96 to 100% native plant-to-insect food web is required to sustain a healthy chickadee population in a given area, meaning even a single heavily sprayed, ornamental-only yard in an otherwise healthy neighborhood can function as a quiet dead zone within a larger living network of yards. The rosebush you protected this spring may have cost a chickadee family next door more than you'll ever see from your kitchen window.
There's a quieter historical echo here. In the 1960s, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring documented how DDT thinned eggshells and silenced songbirds across entire regions of the country. A connection between a chemical bought for ordinary, reasonable purposes and a near total collapse of bird life that took decades to reverse after the 1972 federal ban. Neonicotinoids and modern broad-spectrum sprays aren't DDT. The mechanism is different, the scale is different, but the underlying pattern, a substance proven safe by the standards available at the time, used exactly as directed, quietly emptying a landscape of birds, is the same pattern, repeating in smaller, more diffuse form in millions of ordinary backyards today.
So picture that spray bottle in your hand again. The label hasn't changed. The instructions haven't changed. What's changed is what you now know is happening underneath the soil and inside the leaf after the spray dries. The insects quietly disappearing. The chickadee nest 6,000 caterpillars short. The migration delayed by days that matter more than they sound. The bird outside your window this morning, picking through your garden bed, isn't just foraging. It's running a calculation in real time about whether your yard is worth the risk of staying.
The good news is that this is one of the most reversible harms in this entire field. Unlike habitat loss or climate shifts, a pesticide decision is one you remake every single season, sometimes every single week. Replacing even a portion of your yard's broad-spectrum sprays with targeted, insect-specific treatments, or removing them where pests are tolerable, restores that caterpillar supply almost immediately. Tallamy's research suggests even modest native plant additions can rebuild local insect abundance within a single growing season. The chickadee outside your window isn't waiting for a perfect yard. It's waiting for a slightly less hostile one. If this changed how you'll look at your garden shed, the next video traces a different kind of memory, the one a crow keeps of every human face it's ever seen, and what that means for the birds that already know yours. New video every week. I'll see you in the yard. What you can do this week: delay spraying until after dawn and dusk foraging hours, when birds are least active near treated plants. Choose targeted treatments over broad-spectrum sprays, wherever pests are tolerable. Leave one untreated corner of your yard as a caterpillar reserve. Check labels specifically for neonicotinoid active ingredients, imidacloprid, clothianidin, thiamethoxam, and consider alternatives during nesting season.
roughly March through July.